Hello, Rhiannon.
That was quick. Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. Congratulations on all the happy place news. I'm buzzing for you. What an achievement, Fearne. The books and the music, it's amazing.
Yeah, I'm really chuffed, and the books thing's really exciting for us. So thank you. That means a lot. Thank you so much, Rhiannon. I'm thrilled to be talking to you today because I've got so many questions for you, and I think a lot of people still just have a lot of confusion around food. So, you know, you're a nutritionist, you have your own clinic, you really help people find a healthy relationship with food. Can you articulate, you know, what is a bad relationship with food? What is a good relationship with food?
It's such a good question. I think at the moment, a lot of people are probably thinking, actually, do I have a good relationship with food? I think lockdown means we've had so much time, haven't we, to really focus every day on what we're doing. And I guess to answer that question, that looks different to absolutely everybody. But the main crux of it would be, do you feel guilt around eating? Are you constantly focusing on perhaps rewards or food rules inside your head? So I can only eat this if it's not 6 o'clock, or it's gone this time, or I've done a run, or perhaps if my husband says I can have X, or every Friday I just eat this. If there are very rigid kind of rules surrounding how you live your life and how you eat your food, I wouldn't say that was the best relationship. The best one, in all honesty, is a flexible relationship with food, one where you feel comfortable to eat what you want when you want, without guilt, judgment, or shame, really.
Well, that's it, because, you know, often we think there's either eating and eating disorders and there's no grey area. But like you've just illustrated, there's this bit in the middle where, you know, you might think you've got a pretty good relationship with food, but still you have got this weird subconscious book of rules that that informs what you eat and when. And what, my kids are up to something. What are you guys doing? Do not come in here, you cheeky monkeys. They're holding hands.
Aww.
They've never ever held hands. I mean, they hate each other. What, they're holding hands. They're up to something. I'm absolutely terrified. But this is it. There's this grey area where you might think you've got a pretty regular relationship with food, but you've got this stuff that just informs you, and it's so subconscious because it's in your routine. It's part of your day. It's worked into even reward systems with how you go about your business. So I think it's a really interesting one to sort of think about. And I think one of the things that I'd love to talk to you about as well today is confusion, because I know when I was sort of getting better from having had a really bad relationship with food in my 20s, I was really game for change, and I really wanted to find a new way, but I felt so confused about what I was meant to eat, because we are bombarded with, you know, it's usually in the papers or something, or you'll see it on Pinterest or in a meme or something, like 1 minute it's don't eat eggs, then it's eat loads of eggs, then it's eat potatoes, then it's don't eat potatoes. No, you're not coming in here, missus. Oh my God, they're terrifying me today, my kids.
Gosh, when mine gets to that age, I don't know what I'm going to do. 10 months and I'm like, how are you doing it?
Well, because I don't want to put their faces out there on Instagram. I'm so nervous they're going to come in.
Yeah.
You know, so we have this confusion around food. You know, do I eat eggs? Do I not? Is bread bad? High carbs, low carbs, high protein, low fat, high fat. You know, it changes constantly. And I think that's where many people go, oh my God, am I doing the wrong thing? Am I eating in a way that is going to be wrong or bad for me, or whatever it might be, whatever's sort of driving that fear? And I just think that's something that we're all probably dealing with in some way, food confusion. How do we get around that? How do we just have a relationship where there's no bad food? Food is just food.
It's hard, because you're right. Everybody internally builds what I call a food world for themselves. And that world is created from childhood with what you believe is healthy. So perhaps healthy to you would be, maybe I make my 5 a day every day, but to someone else it might just be, oh, I had 1 portion of broccoli this week, therefore that was a good healthy week. You know, it's so different. So we create these kind of societal norms as to what dictates how we should be seeing food. And we absorb subliminally all these media messages. Like you said, eggs were in the headlines last week in the Daily Mail. All these outlets and media outlets are constantly using food as such a topic, and it's emotive fun. I think that's what that gets us. You know, we're all like, oh gosh, I give my kids this food. Have I done something wrong? Or this is what I used to eat when I was 14 and it made me feel great, and now suddenly perhaps I want it again, or I've got guilt. The way you get around it, I think, is by removing all the noise from your head and trying to outlet it somewhere else. So a good starting step for people would be maybe keeping a food and mood diary if you're really, really struggling at the moment, because often, and try, instead of saying how hungry you are before you eat a meal, afterwards say how satisfied you felt. So if you ate something, did it actually make you feel good? Did you enjoy it? Not just, oh, I'm full now. Start identifying the why you make those food choices, and is it a feeling or a fact in that moment that that's the truth? So if your mum always said growing up, oh, you mustn't have lollipops, they're really, really bad for your teeth. Well, obviously it's a fact they're not great for your teeth, but is it the feeling of guilt you have when you're eating it? Because of course a one-off lollipop's fine. It's if you're having it multiple times every single day. So I think it's kind of how you reshape that food world, and that means creating new experiences with food. It means challenging yourself to things you wouldn't feel comfortable with doing normally. So if something's off limits, I normally do a traffic light list. So I do green items with my clients of foods that they feel safe to have every single day. And for most people, green is probably fruit and veg, right? Or I would hope good carbohydrates, but unfortunately I find carbohydrates tend to go in the red category of the
they've been so badly sort of publicized over the years unnecessarily.
100%, really unnecessarily. And you build up this belief about pasta being really bad, or a belief that bread is bad, whereas actually those foods should also be part of your greens. So I would challenge anyone to whatever's in the middle. Like amber tends to be items for people like snack bars or nuts or granola, things like that. They'll have occasionally, but they might have a little bit of food guilt surrounding it. And I would challenge those beliefs by saying, right, let's pick one from the red list and try it today. Keep the food mood diary. How do you feel? It's, as you can see from me saying it, it's not easy, is it? It's not just a snap your fingers. You have to put hard work into reframing how you see food.
But this is it, like you can say it out loud so simply, and I've seen some of the comments saying, well, everybody just needs to eat a balanced diet, and that is true, but I think it's so emotive. And before I kind of went on this, I hate the word journey, but you know, this experience of looking at food differently, just to eat a balanced diet, I wouldn't have known how to do that. And not only because I had less of an understanding of food and I was less educated about food out of choice, I just didn't want to know about it. Also, it is so emotive, and that's the bit that confuses everything. We all know that in those moments where we feel massively upset, angry, you know, a big strong emotion, all logic and sense goes out the window, and that's when we will lean on habit and also comfort. Or, you know, and comfort isn't, you know, this is why it's also complex and often difficult to talk about, is that of course it's different for everybody. You know, if you feel super stressed, that might make you eat more than you would normally, but equally it might make you not eat for half a day because you literally don't have an appetite. So there are kind of, you know, different ways that we react emotionally, and then lean on habits that might not be making us feel great, but we feel so just blurry in the head about it that we can't. I don't know, sometimes I certainly felt previously like I couldn't make a positive change because I was so stuck in it. What do you do with clients when they're kind of in such food ruts and they know they want change but they just don't feel like they can get out of it?
It's really psychological, that, like, psychology and nutrition work hand in hand. And I often refer to something called Orbach's theory of hunger, which is there are around 10 different states of emotion. So emotions aren't just happy and sad. You mentioned at the beginning there's such a grey spectrum, an area in between black and white. Well, that's so true with emotions. You've got maybe excitement. People don't realize you could eat because you're excited, and there's the boredom factor, and there's the fact you may have just had a fight or a partner dispute or something, an argument with your loved ones, and there are so many reasons and emotions in this spectrum. So the way that you would go about tackling how to first of all even get motivation to change is to first of all identify, oh, food isn't going to serve my purpose right now, and that's blooming hard. So if you're about to reach for the cupboard, and I know a lot of people are stuck in a binge restrict cycle at the moment in lockdown, so many of our clients, it's tough. But the first thing you need to do is do the regular balanced meals and then have a minute stop delay. So in that moment, just think, I know I'm going to eat this right now, but after I've eaten it, will I actually feel any better? If the answer is probably no, then you know that something else has to change here. This isn't about food. Food is your coping strategy in that point in time. I need to call a friend. I need to get some help. If I'm fortunate enough and lucky enough, I can afford a therapist. If not, I need to speak to someone now. I need to go onto, I don't know, the Beat website or a charity website, speak to a Samaritan on the phone, just anything to block that point, and then put in maybe 2 minutes next time just to sit with your feelings, because we don't sit with our feelings. I mean, who wants to?
We should, though. It's something that I'm definitely looking into as I guess do more and more of this work and talk to interesting people, is that as soon as we start to suppress emotions, if anything, it just elongates the period of time that you'll be feeling it. So you might not eat because you're feeling very angry about something, or you might eat more because you're feeling very angry about it, but actually that will just prolong the anger. Whereas if we sit with it and go, you know, what is this? What is the root of this? It's usually not even to do with the circumstance. I mean, sometimes it might be, but it's probably more historic and deeply rooted when it comes to sort of emotional reactions to things. And you're right, you know, we don't want to sit in those emotions. We want to suppress it or distract ourselves. You know, that's where also I think food links to like using our phones too much or technology, because it's another distraction and another way of sort of filling this void that we might be feeling. And it's, I think, like you said, it's just that first step is to identify that and have the awareness around it, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. If you identify it, then it can be worked upon.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult. It's very easy for me to dish out the advice. I know when you're stuck with something and there's something going on in your life that is so hard to deal with, actually, first of all, praise yourself for turning to food. And that might sound like, what? Why is she saying that's a good thing? Because you didn't harm yourself in another way. Now, it is a form of harm if it goes on for a chronic, prolonged period of time. It can be extremely dangerous. But for some of us, okay, the occasional binge eating, actually, you didn't turn to drugs, you didn't turn to anything else, any further form of self-harm. At least you turned to food. And people probably think I'm crazy saying that, but it's true.
No,
and
it's so true.
Yeah, work on
and
it
also
after.
you didn't hurt anybody else, because, you know, feeling angry isn't the problem. Feeling angry is normal. Feeling angry and then taking it out on someone else, that's where it gets bad. That's the bit that you probably shouldn't do. Feeling angry is fine. Feeling angry is an emotion, like any emotion. Like you say, if eating a few biscuits is all you've done, then it's all good. I don't think it's crazy at all. I think it's really, really sound advice. And it is just perhaps noticing those moments where you know that what you're doing isn't quite working for you either way. And I think a big part of that also is, you know, I'm not saying anything new here in the slightest. This is massively recycled because we've all been talking about it non-stop for years. But we know that some of the stuff we see online, especially social media, which we all kind of love, but also know that there's a toxic element. You know, we're bombarded with body messages and body imagery that isn't often helpful. And it's never going to go away. And that's probably, you know, we might sort of see or be able to have more choice over what we're seeing, but it's always kind of around, and we need to truly understand, and I say this also from the point of view of where I was at in my 20s, that a body looking a certain way doesn't equal anything. That doesn't equal health or happiness or contentment. That doesn't exist. You know, all of those feelings of contentment or happiness or whatever, or just being healthy, are an inside job. But we still just conflate the two massively.
Yeah, we get it so confused. Now, of course, nutrition can play a role with mood, and you can create serotonin and dopamine through food. You can eat carbohydrates and proteins together, and that will boost ultimately those hormones, and that can help melatonin and sleep. And if you sleep well, you feel better. It's a cycle, but it's not that straightforward. Everybody has life. We all are exposed to these things all the time. And I think body image and food are interlinked so heavily. Of course, there are so many reasons aside from that. We mentioned already it's a coping strategy for a whole spectrum of emotions. But if you are looking at social media, and in lockdown, we're using technology to a point where we wouldn't survive without it. Let's be honest. We need it, but it's not healthy for our mental health at all. And also it can disrupt hunger signals. So when you're eating and you're just looking at your phone or you're looking at technology, you're not getting that ghrelin or leptin, which tell you when you're hungry and when you're full, because you're distracted. So you're not actually acknowledging the process of food going to your mouth, going to the stomach, going into the gut. You're not getting that connection in the same way because you're just on computer all the time.
And there's been a lot, you know, I've read a couple of things over the last year or two about intuitive eating, where it's, you know, that's not based on what anyone's telling you in a magazine or you've seen on Instagram. It's about not only noticing those hunger signals, but also what you feel you need. Do you sort of incorporate that into your work?
Yeah, 100%. And we have intuitive eating in the Rhiannon Clinic, and we've got people that sign up for that service. It's actually often people that have yo-yo dieted for years that are the first to sign up for something like intuitive eating, and it can be life-changing. It's a really praised method by lots of registered nutritionists and dietitians. And if you see anybody, for everyone listening, that's saying one size fits all, that should be a huge red flag. And one of the main things about nutrition is it is so unique. And intuitive eating really does challenge what we call the food police, which is those embedded rules, which perhaps we did learn from our parents or at school, when we always had dessert with your main course at lunch, or you have to eat this food and then that food follows that food. And it's just unpicking those rules. And then somehow you get back in touch with how you feel when you eat, with your hunger signals. You can identify what you're eating. Do you enjoy it right now? You know you're eating for enjoyment, not because you need it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's tough though, Fearne. That takes a hell of a lot of work to get to that level with intuitive eating. It's hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. I don't know if I'm there to some extent, because I definitely know what will make me not feel great, but I don't always know if I follow that, you know, entirely. You know, there are so many other sort of things that we hear in the media and talk about, and you know, one of them more recently has been fasting, you know, in all different sorts of ways. And, you know, as someone that, you know, I had a pretty awful eating disorder in my 20s, anything like that makes me feel a bit panicked, like, oh my God, what's this new thing and what is it? And that's probably quite a dangerous thing for me to go anywhere near because, you know, of my past. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
I'm so glad you brought it up, because there's quite a well-known public figure at the moment talking about fasting, and has mixed it with a word like intuitive, which they don't go together. Fasting is not intuitive. Human nature requires you to eat. You don't intuitively think, I'm going to just restrict my food for a day. And for anybody that does have a history of an eating disorder or disordered eating, I would really speak to somebody if you are thinking of embarking upon this, because when we fast, lots of things happen within our body. There are lots of miracle claims which are not true. Ultimately, it's caloric restriction, so energy in, energy out. You're reducing energy, and a lot of fasting is linked to weight loss. But there's some that's linked to claims with a healthier gut and the bacteria within the gut, and we're still researching that. But it doesn't mean you have to skip any meals. We don't have the answers yet. There basically isn't any research on humans that suggests that fasting is a miracle. But for some reason, people make a lot of money off pushing these types of things, because people see results very quickly when they suddenly drastically restrict their energy intake. Also, when you do kind of semi-starve, and this is a really sad thing, but for anybody with a severe eating disorder, a lot of the time they can feel euphoric when they restrict. And that's because it's a survival mechanism. The body actually helps produce those types of endorphins and those feel-good feelings when you're restricting. So it's to mask the actual pain your body is going through in that moment. So I know that it's controversial, and there'll be lots of people watching that perhaps think, I don't agree with Rhiannon whatsoever right now. Fasting works for me. And if it does, that's great. For some people, it might fit into your lifestyle. But for most, it might really trigger a disordered relationship with food. I went off a bit on that one.
Well, no, I think you're absolutely right, because actually something like that isn't sustainable. You know, you can't fast for life. So, you know, it's a sort of a short-term thing. And, you know, for me, I just know that that's not something I can go anywhere near. let's for a minute talk about the more sort of extreme end of things, because, you know, I'm not sure who's watching or who will end up watching this. I'm sure there's lots of people who just have general food confusion, but, you know, I come from a place where, I mean, I've only talked about it probably in the last year, really, that I had bulimia all through my 20s. It was sort of more severe at the start of my 20s, much less so by the end, but it actually became more about, it was more of an emotional reaction towards the end of my 20s. So if I was stressed out, feeling usually out of control, it felt like, you know, I think in my 20s when I kind of started doing more, you know, sort of bigger TV shows, and everything just felt quite out of control. That was my way of controlling it. It had so little to do with what I felt like, what I looked like. It was just this sort of reaction to what was going on around me. And I wonder how you deal with that sort of situation, where it's not necessarily about, you know, an emotional reaction or wanting to look a certain way. It's sort of, I don't know, it's an otherworldly thing that you feel like, I felt like I had no control over it. It was just sort of happening to me almost. Where do you even begin with that? You know, what I don't know if it's a regret, but I kind of wish that I'd got professional help, because I didn't. I just sort of naturally, as I got older and as I, you know, then wanted to have children, I sort of sorted myself out, but I didn't go down the professional route. And I'm interested to see, you know, how you encourage somebody to get out of something like bulimia.
It takes, first of all, for you to even, I'm still in awe of the fact that as such a huge public profile, you can share that, Fearne, because for anybody listening, that takes huge courage, just for Fearne to just talk about it.
It took me a long time. Like, honestly, I talked about lots of other things before that. It felt truly too personal, and also, you know, it's all of anything to do with food is emotive, isn't it? So people have judgments or comments, and you just, you know, that's too much for me to handle, for sure. But I feel pretty okay, you know, sort of talking about it now, hopefully, because there'll be other people out there who will want to also make good changes.
And it's not, like you said, for so many people, eating disorders are not just about food. It is a general emotional control, a coping strategy that you develop at a time when you are stuck and you do not know what to do. So what we would do if anybody came forward, we've got myself and a lovely team of registered dietitians in the clinic, where we will first of all try and get to the bottom of what is actually going on. And that means working with a psychologist and a nutrition professional together. So it's not too overwhelming, and it's step by step. First of all, it would be, from my perspective, a nutrition perspective, it would be to get you to eat regularly, because that's very difficult when you're in a blur. Like you said, it can feel like a complete emotional roller coaster, but it's a blur. You can't jump off the wagon once you're on. You're stuck. It's like a compulsion. Like, you just get into this habit where you have to do it. And bulimia, there's lots of different types of bulimia as well. Not for everybody, it's not always involving purging. So that there's so many different.
Yeah, I didn't really purge much at all. It wasn't about that at all.
Yeah, and that's what I think.
I'm not sorry. I did purge. I didn't binge. Yeah. There was no binge element. Mine was eating pretty regularly, and in a kind of, you know, with normal amounts, but still purging.
Yeah, exactly. And that's bespoke. Obviously, it's bespoke to you, and everybody's got their unique way. And that means the therapy that you should receive should be unique, first of all, to what is going on for you. But nutritionally, if you are not eating regular meals, it's one of the first things that you will do as a health professional is try and get someone, because you won't be thinking clearly. If you're not getting the right amount of fuel or nutrition into your brain, and you're going through, purging takes a lot out of the body. What people don't realize is you can die from eating disorders. You can die from having bulimia. These are serious mental health illnesses. And if we're not fueling the brain, it's very, very difficult for anybody to actually then embark on treatment. It's the same with other eating disorders. If you're not eating well, it's very difficult to undergo psychological therapy because you can't process it.
Yeah.
And for so many people, even to come forward and seek help. So if you were to get professional help, it would be the first thing I'd encourage for anybody, just to pick up the phone. And that is the first step, is to say, I need some help, because it would be like a weight lifted off your shoulder. I promise you don't have to live with it forever. You can get better if you have bulimia. Like, Fearne is living proof that you can. And it's
absolutely. But you do need, you do need to definitely talk to people, and you do need to reach out for help. And that's why, I know this chat is you know, so this is a big chat. This is a
It's
deep
quite
chat
deep.
we're having here.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's important because, you know, I love talking about perhaps the lighter end of what we talked about at the start, which is general food confusion, which I think many people have. But I don't like to go into this subject unless we're going to also offer some sort of nod to help people that might be going through something pretty extreme. And obviously that's where your expertise lies as well. So it'd kind of be silly not to. So I just think it's so important that people know that there are ways out of that and you aren't trapped in it.
For anyone listening, if they go to, obviously, My Nutrition Clinic, we help. But if you're not able to afford any private help or one-to-one, if you just go to BEAT, which is the registered charity in the UK for eating disorders, they've got a whole list of resources. If you're worried about someone else and you don't know how to speak to them, because I think that can be really hard. Like, how do you do that? There's a whole page on carers or how to speak to friends. The NHS websites are great. There are so many places out there now online that you can. That's one good thing. There we go. Good thing about the internet.
It's, you know what, I think that's been one of the best things about this last year is that we've realised we can be connected and get help without having to go anywhere. Like that's been game changing. And there's another talk that I'm going to be doing over the weekend, which is on a sort of similar theme, that how we can stay connected, get help, find support, find community without having to go anywhere. So I think, you know, that's where the digital world really comes into its own. And you know, as you just listed, there's loads of places where people kind of can get help. And okay, let's go back to where we sort of started with, you know, that general sort of food confusion. And also, you know, we're living in a pandemic. So, you know, we're still in this weird lockdown and people are kind of stuck at home, and people are probably feeling maybe more confused about food or not sure if they're overeating or undereating or whatever. What can people do there? Is it just about tuning into that intuitive eating? Is it just about sort of eating a bit of everything? Where do we start with that?
So just on the flip side, because we've obviously discussed if you have a problem with food, if you don't have an emotional thing with food at the moment going on, then actually something that can be very useful can be to reshape your kitchen, because there will be people listening that are just like, well, you know, I just like to snack because it's there, that kind of attitude. What can really help can be to, I call it, do like a spring clean of your kitchen. Just change where you keep typical food items you reach for, keep cupboard doors shut. There's research that suggests if you see food on the surfaces around you, you're more likely to reach for it than if it's shut behind the cupboard door and it's organized, looking aesthetically perfect, which was a fascinating study. Like, if you actually decant your pasta into jars of pasta and you make your cupboard look really, I don't know if you're that type of person, but if you're all listening and
I kind of am, which is slightly annoying.
I love a pasta jar.
I love a pasta jar.
But that's the stuff that can really help if you just make sure that where you're working is also a different room to the kitchen if you can. Like, my current study is in my wardrobe room because my husband's in the study downstairs. So I get it. If you can't work in a perfect environment, get out for fresh air. If you're constantly in the same space, you're more likely to overeat as well. If you actually go out and get fresh air, you're less likely to. There's all these factors. Hydration. Drink enough water. If you don't drink enough water, you'll probably end up eating more as well. You can confuse hunger with thirst. And then, of course, if you are emotionally eating and you're in that point, please get a food and mood diary. And it may sound tedious. I don't want you to do it on your phone. I want you to get a pen and paper, because we know if you physically write something on a pen and paper, it will go in 10 times more than if you type it or you put it on your phone for some bizarre reason.
No, so it's the power of the pen. It's brilliant. That's why writing a diary just in general is so lovely if you can be bothered. You know, it's gorgeous. So yeah, I think that's such good advice. And it's also just to make those connections, because I know that I definitely still emotionally eat. I don't have
we all do.
Yeah, we all do it. We all do it. And especially at the moment, you know, it's been a very dark, cold winter, and in the evenings you do just want to kind of hunker down, get a really nice load of snacks and sit and watch Netflix, and it's cozy and whatever. And you know, I think that there is an element of all of us kind of doing that at the moment, because we are just we're just trying to be quite resilient for a very long time, aren't we, at the moment? So I think
we all are.
We're all just sort of leaning into that a bit. We're exhausted.
Yeah, it's been long. I think the weather makes a huge difference. If for some reason, if the winter months, survival wise speaking, we do just want to hoard up, and we can't get our comfort and that feel good factor from the sun. I'm sure everybody, if you had a sunny day where you live today, I bet you all felt 10 times better. Like everyone's mood is just up, and you're less likely to then reach if you're struggling emotionally for food, because you've already got that feel good factor. Whereas in the winter, we're just searching for it. And these are unknown times. And that's why I said be kind, because in the context of obviously to yourself and your body, I mean, when I say be kind, just because what else can you do at the moment? We're separated from loved ones. As human beings, we need social interaction to thrive, and we're not getting it. I mean, I'm personally a home person. I could happily stay locked down, but meeting people,
same.
I
love being at home. I'm not rushing out to the old discotheque on June the 21st, whatever it is. I will be still on my couch. I miss having friends over, but I'm like you. I'm lucky that I like being at home. I know that's not the case for everyone, but I certainly do. But I think, we are searching for that comfort, and you're right. We just need to be kind to ourselves, because so often we might use, under eating or overeating to self-punish, because, well, this is the other interesting thing, because there is self-loathing there, and we've all probably got that to some extent. It's hard to completely love and accept yourself, or I found it more difficult to love and accept myself in the past, the me in my 20s, etc. And I think that still reverberates, even though I'm 40 this year. It's still there, and I think you have to kind of, it's a process, learning to love every bit of you, and or have acceptance around you and your past and all sorts of stuff, to really ensure that you're then acting from that kind place.
Society doesn't teach you or want you to love yourself, and that's the bizarre thing. I don't know if it's in the UK. I'd love to know what it's like in other countries around the world, but it does seem that we are brought up in a society to criticize, to strive always for something more. We're not taught to say, hey, well done today.
It's probably advertising, isn't it? Mainly, sort of, you are lacking, we're going to fix you, there's something wrong with you, and we're going to make you better. I think it's such a, probably all started off in the Mad Men era or whatever, but we're still sort of buying into bits of that. And, we know that any sort of contentment's going to come from within. But I think, the self-loathing versus self-acceptance and love thing is such a big one for all of us. And
the judgment, Fearne.
The judgment. It's gone off the scale.
It's crazy. You can just people take one look at somebody on the internet and think they know what they eat, what they do, what their lifestyle's like, if they have a good relationship with their family. I find that very bizarre. And until we can have these chats like we're having now, and just reassure everybody that, hey, you don't know what's actually going on behind the scenes. Everybody, no matter what they look like, has a story and probably a relationship with food. Everyone.
Well, exactly. I think, we're so quick to pass judgment is the other problem. It's, it's a 1 second thought. It might even be you've taken 10 seconds to write a comment about it in a judgmental way. And, that's probably because that person doesn't particularly love and accept themselves. And, we all kind of know that, but it still stings to some extent. But I think, it's a really nice message for us all to kind of take a step back and go, right, let's have a look at how much I'm self-loathing versus the bits of me that's still, craving love and acceptance. And we're the only ones that can give the love and acceptance. You're not going to get it from likes on Instagram. You just, I can safely say that as someone who's got a nice body of followers, and, people like my pictures. People also slag me off on Instagram. That if people like me, that's not going to fulfill my inner contentment. And I think, again, we need to sort of look at that. We know some of the most renowned people in the world still feel quite empty, or don't feel great about themselves. We've got to cultivate that from within only, and that's something I'm still massively learning from all the brilliant people that I'm getting to talk to at the moment. But I think when we can look at the psychology behind modern day life and how we eat, it's very, very interesting and very, very complex, and it's great that you're doing all this brilliant work. And I urge anyone that's watching this now, if you want to sort of know more, learn more, and keep hearing this sort of narrative, follow Rhiannon on Instagram, and this is exactly what Rhiannon does, so it's awesome.
I just think if people know more, then you have the power to make a better decision. If you can just educate yourself, because no one else is going to take a step out and try and help you unless you kind of try and do a little bit of it. So yeah,
that's exactly it. You know, the more you know, sort of educated you are in it, the more understanding, the better decisions we'll all make, and we'll just probably take that step back and take a bit more time when we are making decisions as well around anything, whether that's self-love, acceptance, or food related. So look, thank you so much. I've so enjoyed talking. I know you've got your little baby probably to go and feed or put in the bath now.
Bath time, bedtime ahead now.
Well, same. I mean, mine are just being absolute wild animals over there somewhere now. I think my husband's managed to rein them in, but I'm going to go and do the same. But thank you so much.